Mike, here we are outside Province House, the People's House, closed to the public. And I think a month ago, maybe even a few weeks ago, we would have thought the biggest challenge facing the McNeil government would have been their response to Northern Pulp. That's not the case.
No, and as evidence to just how quickly things are changing, we have seen since Sunday some pretty drastic measures about what is and is not permitted here in the province. The Premier and the Chief Medical Officer of Health issuing directives on things like closing schools and daycares, self-isolation being mandatory for anybody who comes back from out of country to Nova Scotia. Whether you've got symptoms or not, you have to self-isolate for 14 days. And I think what we're also seeing here is evidence of why governments do the type of emergency planning, disaster planning, in this case pandemic planning, that they do, so that as things escalate, as they have here in Nova Scotia, they are able to step up the response.
Right. We love to have certainty in our lives and answers to our questions, but in a case like this where events are quickly overtaking governments, they're having to be much more reactive. And it appears, to me anyway, that the government is really letting the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Robert Strang, drive this bus, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think you want the experts, the scientists, the doctors, the public health officials to be the ones leading the charge. No disrespect to elected officials. And we've seen the government, in fairness to them, responding fairly promptly to, for example, concerns that not enough was going on at airports. That's a federal jurisdiction, and yet the province said, we hear what people are saying, we agree, we're going to have more inspectors there. We also saw that in the form of enhanced communication about the daycare closures. There was a lot of confusion and uncertainty around that, and earlier this week the Premier issued a new set of communications kind of clarifying and going straight to addressing some of the questions that people have posted online.
And the other thing that's very clear from what we're hearing from Robert Strang is that we're all in this together, and that Nova Scotians shouldn't just look for their government to fix all that needs fixing, that we have a responsibility as citizens to do things like not hoard, to stay away from people as much as possible. And we've seen the government do that by sending a lot of their workers home. So the responsibility rests with government clearly to make the decisions that it needs to make, but there's also responsibility for individuals to do what we can to make sure that when we get through this crisis, we limit the kind of damage that we've seen in other countries.